Welcome back. This is Civil Discourse Now. My name is Mark Small. I'm co-host with Paul Ogden. We're coming to you from Indianapolis, Indiana, where we film at Big Hat Books. Big Hat Books has an excellent selection of books. Amongst them, Jeff, don't do the commercial thing again. But and so it goes.
You want to pay for 1 second.
A biography of Kurt Vonnegut Jr., who is a local author. It has an excellent selection of books. It has space here that you can rent for special occasions. It also has a gallery on the second floor. There are some really interesting paintings from the G.C. Lucas Gallery that are on display there by artists from all over the country. We're talking today, the first part of the show, we're talking about Citizens United, that one blogger characterized the Supreme Court's decision in Citizens United as bad on a scale of Dred Scott. That was me, that's right. Our guests today are Nicolas Martin. He's a longtime libertarian, that's with a little L, devoted serf to his 9-year-old daughter. And Jeff Cox, he has jrcoxlawllc.com. He's also been a frequent blogger on
all sorts of issues, especially...
No, I meant your website.
Oh, okay. No boxes allowed.
Yeah. And Paul, everybody else was talking in the last segment.
Oh, great.
Now, what's your take on this thing?
Well, I believe I would compare Citizens United to a case, but I wouldn't go back as far as Dred Scott. I would say I go back to 1973, Roe versus Wade. This is a case. I believe greatly in deferring to the legislative process, that you defer to the Congress unless it's black and white in terms of something being unconstitutional. They have been regulating corporate speech since, I believe, 1907. This is not new, yet the rationale of Citizens United can be applied across the board. It isn't limited. The rationale that they use, although it just applies to independent expenditures, but there's no reason that same rationale can't be used for direct contributions to candidates. I don't see a big difference between the independent expenditures and giving money directly to candidates. And I think we're having an election where Mitt Romney is proving that there isn't a lot of difference. He's using an independent committee, independent expenditures made possible by Citizens United to hammer other candidates that are opposing him. So, but at the end of the day, this is a policy decision that should have been left to the legislature. I'm not sure, but I think we might be all in agreement that they should allow the film.
The film that's free speech.
Free speech. I think maybe we all agree about that. But what they could have said simply was, this is not, I forget the term, electioneering communication. This is on-demand video where people are asking to watch this film. It's not a short. It's not a commercial, not a 60-second commercial.
They had
full length.
They had 15 and 30-second commercials that they were wanting to place on ads too. That was
to promote the movie, though, wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay, it was to promote the movie. It's a full-length movie. I think maybe we all agree that they should be able to show this movie, and it was not something that should have fell under the restrictions. Yet the Supreme Court went out of its way to make this decision when the actual issue wasn't before them. That's judicial activism.
Well, and the issue wasn't before them because both sides had stipulated that they were not going to go to the constitutionality of the act. But the Supreme Court did. Now, a couple of points on that. Nick, you mentioned that there's no authority to limit speech.
No legitimate moral authority.
Unless there's an immediate threat to life.
Right.
I don't read that in the Constitution. I don't see it. I don't see a clause about immediate threat.
No.
So that's
there are circumstances that I'm saying if for example, somebody rushed into a theater and screamed fire, and the patrons were trampled to death. It's not the speech that should be prosecuted. It's a consequence of the speech that led to those deaths. It's the activity. But no, I would say there are no circumstances where words per se should be.
But the speech was the catalyst.
It was the catalyst. That's right. That's why I'm describing it.
So that could be prosecuted unless there actually was a fire.
Well, Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not true that you can't shout fire in a crowded theater even when there's no fire. It just depends on the private property circumstances in the theater. But I have a question for Paul.
Yeah.
Do you think that the court should have deferred to the legislature in Dred Scott? Since you said that was your operative principle.
Well, no, because there is a clear constitutional provision, the 14th Amendment, that applied in that situation. No, I don't think they should have deferred to the legislature in Dred Scott. Here, they've been regulating corporate speech for 100 years. The constitutional amendment was the 1867 14th Amendment.
Yes.
So it's natural. They're merely in Dred Scott. They misapplied that provision. They didn't apply the 14th Amendment.
Well,
The Dred Scott was before the 14th Amendment, wasn't it?
no, it was 1893.
Okay.
You're thinking of the
Other one.
the 1850
Yeah, you're
case.
They're at the Roger Taney decision.
Yeah. There's okay. When you're dealing with individuals associating as corporations, though, and this almost gets into the Montana case that we're going to go into, there's kind of a duplicative effect where you have, like, okay, I'm going to act as an individual trying to spread my ideas. I'm also going to create a corporation that says that it's a painting drywalling corporation because I think people will be influenced by the views of a painter drywaller, and I'll create another corporation and another corporation and another corporation. And there's that problem that I see. So you have multiplicity of views artificially created. You also have the great possibility of flooding the market at the last minute in an election campaign with ads that are bogus. Sorry, Swift boat.
You mean like those that George Soros puts on all the time?
Wait a minute, I don't care either side. There shouldn't be a flooding of ads at the last minute that are enabled to be flooded with bogus information by corporations or entities. If the individual candidates get on there and say something...
Who determines if the ad is bogus? I mean, you and I disagree on the Swift boats. The Swift boat ads were by people who served with John Kerry, and they took issue with his characterization of his service. There was nothing inaccurate about that. Who determines? I understand you disagree with me on that, but who determines what's accurate and what's not? And isn't that a political decision?
That's a decision that the disagreement should be between the candidates and the information should be out there, but to do it as a last-minute campaign by a corporation that's like nameless. Yeah, the things that are going on with Romney, for example, Romney had these people. He said that he had nothing to do with the corporation. It's like Save Our Country or something like that. I don't know.
Save Our Future.
Save Our Future. So he said, well, I have no control over that.
By law, you can't have control.
3 months ago, he said, I can tell him to stop if I want. And he's on camera saying that.
Wow.
But they were taking hits against Newt Gingrich, and it's not that I'm a real big Newt Gingrich fan. I'm really not. But it's this, they spent twice as much in Romney's 501c4 as they did in Romney's individual campaign where he says, I'm Mitt Romney and I approved of this commercial. And there's that false image that there's a group that's valued or understood that's disinterested, and they can pump money in and really alter the effect of the election.
Like George Soros.
And I'm not arguing, but where it's a nameless entity and you have a multiplicity of these entities, that's wrong. And also with corporations, I have a problem because corporations aren't necessarily United States corporations. They're just corporations. They're entities that make money. And so we can have foreign interests, and I don't mean to sound xenophobic, but if I am, that's the way it is. A corporation from another country can buy an interest in a corporation here, controlling interest, and then just run ads and act like they're as American as apple pie.
I think that's a legitimate point. You could see corporations coming over that are influenced by the Chinese or owned by the Chinese coming over into American elections. However, one thing I did notice going through the opinion, Kennedy did mention that Congress could come in and amend the statute to deal with foreign corporations. I don't know how you're going to do that, though, because
You'd be talking about
how you're going to determine the nationality of every shareholder.
Yeah, because they would come down to shareholders. And if they're any good at setting up shell corporations, they'd have an American corporation that bought an American corporation that bought an American corporation that was owned overseas. And by the time you found out who actually owned it, you'd be 3 elections down the road.
Well, that's the same thing Major League Baseball did. They could use that with the ownership of the Seattle Mariners. A Japanese corporation wanted to buy the Seattle Mariners. Baseball said no. And they didn't want foreign corporations owning teams. And you can do the same thing in terms of prohibiting foreign corporations for having campaign commercials or political commercials. It's not any different. If baseball can do it, certainly the government can do it.
No, actually, the Japanese do own the Mariners.
No. It's a Japanese investor owns the Mariners, not a Japanese corporation.
Okay. Well, but I was going to say that they did.
And he's an American citizen.
Okay, but no. You're not going to be able to tell who it is ultimately that owns the corporation and is having an effect on American political campaigns. And I think that there are valid restrictions on campaigns. The United States Supreme Court has said that for years. This was the first time in Citizens United where they said, well, no, you can't do that. Corporations are people too.
Yeah, and I have not read up the origin of that notion that corporations are people too and have all the rights that people have, or just about all the rights. I'm skeptical of that.
If they do, I want all the rights of a corporation. I want to be able to escape liability for any of my civil torts.
Or limit liability.
And I don't want to have to go to jail for anything.
So in other words, if you think it's okay if, say, the chairman of GM is made personally liable because someone at an assembly plant in Van Nuys, California, forgot to put a bolt on a car in production and that caused an accident. So you think the chairman of GM should be personally liable for that?
It's called reductio ad absurdum, Jeff. That's what I was doing just a moment ago. I'm saying that there are reasons why corporations have limited liability. But you don't say, well, they have all the rights of a human being, because if you're going to give them all the rights of a human being, a living human being, then we, as living human beings, should have all of their rights too.
Well, no one's saying give the corporation all the rights of a living human being. No one is saying a corporation should be able to vote. No one is saying that. No one has ever said that.
Okay, but corporations being able to dump $100 million into a campaign has the effect of not simply voting, but buying a whole bunch of votes.
Is it buying votes, or is it just influencing how people vote? But you can have corporations on any side of the political spectrum, including political action groups. It doesn't matter what side of the fence you are on any particular issue. There is a group, whether it's a corporation or a political action committee or a lobbyist group, that is advocating for your position. And that is democracy in action. You don't have the time or the resources to go to Washington and talk to your senator about, say, red light timing across the country. I'm just picking an issue up at random. But there is a corporation or there is a political action committee that does. That's its job, and it can go there and talk to them basically on your behalf. And that's what Citizens United is protecting.
Can I insert?
Yes.
First of all, what's the motivation for corporations getting involved in political campaigns? To a significant extent, it's self-defense.
Yes, but it's also at the end of the segment. And we're going to start the next one with you. So we'll be right back.